The Great Pyramid of Giza has been, for nearly 5 millennia, surrounded by a seemingly simple narrative. It was allegedly erected by the pharaoh Khufu as his monumental tomb. According to the traditional version, thousands of workers, equipped only with rudimentary tools, such as copper chisels, ropes, and much determination, allegedly completed this gigantic work in a little over 20 years. But when we observe closely, contradictions arise. The history we learned may not be founded on solid facts, but rather on hypotheses and assumptions, some plausible, others questionable. What if the true story were not only incomplete, but also intentionally covered up? At the center of this enigma is a controversial name, Dr. Zahi Hawass, considered the most influential archaeologist of modern Egypt. For decades, he rigidly controlled every excavation, every find, and every detail revealed under the Egyptian sands. His power was not limited to discoveries, but also to what remained hidden. The strange thing is that, instead of encouraging new research and welcoming different ideas, Hawass gained fame precisely for blocking independent investigations and discrediting alternative theories, especially those that could shake the official narrative he defends so strongly. In interviews, he himself has gone so far as to state that a large part of what is written about the pyramids in archaeology books is incorrect, further reinforcing the aura of mystery that surrounds the subject. The question hanging in the air is inevitable. Why would anyone strive so hard to interrupt research at the exact moment promising discoveries are made? Is he merely preserving the Egyptian historical heritage or trying to hide something even deeper? If you have ever suspected that the pyramids hide more than meets the eye, this is the moment to pay attention. For today, we will explore indications that intrigue scientists, confuse archaeologists, and leave many historians without answers. From hidden chambers, sealed for thousands of years, to stone blocks worked with such impressive precision that they challenge even current technology, the reality behind the Great Pyramid seems to be much more complex, and possibly much older than traditional Egyptology admits. After all, would it be plausible that a work of this magnitude was completed only with ropes, wooden rollers, and hand tools? Or are we facing a heritage of advanced technologies that we do not yet comprehend? If the second hypothesis is true, another inevitable question arises. Who really built it and for what purpose? Today we will traverse the layers of secrets, question the guardians of history, and examine evidence that, although visible, remains ignored. Because often, the greatest mysteries of humanity were not lost. They were merely buried by those who do not want us to ask the right questions. When speaking of ancient Egypt, our mind immediately travels to golden sarcophagi, enigmatic hieroglyphs, and the imposing image of the Great Pyramid rising in the desert. According to the official narrative, its construction dates back to around 2550 BC, during the reign of Khufu, serving as a royal tomb. At first glance, this explanation seems like an extraordinary demonstration of human ingenuity. However, the more one investigates, the more fragile this version proves to be. The reality is that solid evidence to sustain the traditional history is surprisingly scarce, and perhaps we have built our certainties on ground more unstable than we would like to admit. Are we misinterpreting who really built the Great Pyramid and how such an impressive work was possible? Think about this intriguing detail. Despite its historical importance, there is no contemporary inscription to the reign of Khufu that declares, explicitly, that he was responsible for the construction. The ancient Egyptians were known for meticulously recording everything from daily activities to elaborate rituals and royal events. However, regarding the building of their most iconic monument, they left no direct documentation. Archaeologists often cite marks and symbols found in hidden chambers, but these records were only revealed centuries after the first exploration of the pyramid, which raises doubts about their authenticity. After all, the simple presence of a name on a structure does not guarantee that the individual mentioned was indeed the builder. One of the biggest contradictions lies in the purpose attributed to the pyramid. The version accepted by Egyptology maintains that it was the majestic tomb of Khufu. However, unlike other known royal tombs, the Great Pyramid presents no inscriptions exalting the pharaoh, contains no funerary goods, precious ornaments, or even mortal remains that prove the burial. If it really were a mausoleum, we would expect to find the traditional treasures, artifacts, and decorations that characterize royal tombs. The complete emptiness in this regard suggests that the pyramid may have served a different function, perhaps much more sophisticated than is supposed. The mystery deepens when we analyze its architectural precision. The pyramid aligns to true north with impressive exactness, deviating only minimal fractions of a degree, something that still surprises modern engineers and architects. Inside, granite blocks of up to 80 tons reveal signs of cuts and drilling that suggest extremely advanced machining methods. Engineer Christopher Dunn studied these marks and observed perfectly circular drill cores and high-precision cuts, characteristics that would be almost impossible to obtain with copper tools, as the traditional narrative claims. Modern experiments attempting to reproduce these cuts with simple chisels failed. The tools wore out quickly, and progress was insignificant, even after days of effort. This generates an inevitable question. If even today we have difficulty replicating such techniques, how would the Egyptians have managed thousands of years ago? Another curious point arises when we analyze the complex system of internal passages of the pyramid. To erect such structures, some reliable means of lighting would be necessary. Conventional hypotheses speak of torches or oil lamps. However, detailed inspections revealed no soot, smoke residues, or combustion marks on the ceilings and walls of these chambers and corridors. This absence of evidence raises one more question. How did the builders manage to work in complete darkness without leaving any trace of lighting? The total absence of soot in the internal chambers of the Great Pyramid is a detail that completely challenges the conventional explanation. If torches or lamps had been used, smoke marks would inevitably remain on the ceilings and walls. This void raises fascinating questions. Did the builders possess some type of lighting technology that we do not know of? Or even more intriguing, does this suggest a construction method completely different from that accepted by traditional Egyptology? These discoveries point to an uncomfortable possibility. The original builders could have mastered techniques or knowledge much more advanced than current scholars are willing to recognize. Even so, instead of seriously considering such hypotheses, official archaeology, especially under the influence of Dr. Zahi Hawass, stands firm in preserving the established narrative. Independent researchers such as Robert Bauval faced resistance when they presented alternative theories, such as the famous Orion correlation, which suggests that the pyramids were intentionally aligned with the stars of Orion's belt in a configuration that dates back thousands of years before the reign of Khufu. Likewise, geologists like Robert Schoch and thinkers like John Anthony West analyzed the Great Sphinx and found impressive evidence of erosion caused by running water and intense rains, something that contradicts the traditional explanation of wear by wind and sand. West demonstrated that the rounded and undulating patterns around the body of the Sphinx could only have been carved by the action of torrential rains. The problem is that the last time the Sahara Desert received this volume of precipitation was about 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. This raises a disturbing question. Could the Sphinx have been carved by a civilization much older, preceding Pharaonic Egypt? According to West, the history of the Sphinx could have started very differently from what we learned. In remote times, when the Giza Plateau was still a green savanna, an unknown group of sculptors would have used a rocky outcrop to carve a gigantic figure, perhaps a lion, perhaps a god. Later, with the desertification of the region, sandstorms would have buried the statue almost completely, largely preserving the marks of water erosion. Centuries later, around 2500 BC, the pharaohs of the 4th dynasty possibly found this already existing monument and remodeled it, giving the face traits closer to the pharaohs we know. Thus, far from being the creator, the pharaoh Khafra would have merely restored the Sphinx. Despite relying on consistent geological analyses and counting on the backing of specialists from different fields, this hypothesis is still rejected by the majority of traditional Egyptologists. And to this day, no convincing alternative explanation has been presented to solve the mystery of the true age of the Sphinx. The result is that this enigma remains open, awaiting answers, and perhaps revealing that our understanding of antiquity is much more limited than we imagine. The West is, for many academics, a true nightmare. A researcher comes from outside the official circle, presents a clear thesis, well-founded, full of solid data, and practically impossible to refute. And suddenly, the ground seems to disappear beneath the feet of tradition. And how does the Academy react to this? Often by ignoring it, pretending that such ideas will disappear by themselves. But they do not disappear. This raises an inevitable question. Why such resistance to exploring alternative possibilities? Is it really out of zeal to protect the historical heritage of Egypt? Or is something more human at stake, such as the preservation of academic reputation, national pride, or established authority? If there truly is nothing extraordinary hidden under the sands of Giza, why so much secrecy, so much reluctance to investigate further? Perhaps the answer lies in something much bigger, the chance that, hidden in the pyramid, there is a lost technology, sophisticated enough to rewrite our understanding of ancient civilizations, and even of the history of humanity itself. As we dive into this mystery, the questions become increasingly intriguing. What is hidden inside the Great Pyramid may be much more significant than we ever dared to imagine. Hidden secrets. When we think of the pyramid, we generally remember the known chambers, the kings, the queens, and the corridors that connect them. But the most recent investigations have revealed something even stranger. In the early 1990s, the German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink gained prominence by exploring narrow passages that led out of the Queen's chamber. Until then, it was believed that these channels were merely symbolic without any practical function. With the help of a robot equipped with a camera, Gantenbrink made a surprising discovery. At the end of one of the shafts, he found a small limestone door, fitted with precision and equipped with 2 copper handles, something never before seen in any other part of the pyramid. The enigmatic Gantenbrink's door quickly captured worldwide attention. After all, the use of metal inside the pyramid was unprecedented, and it seemed to indicate that this door was sealing something important. However, before his team could advance, Egyptian authorities interrupted the investigation, without providing convincing explanations. The world waited almost a decade until, in 2002, a team sponsored by National Geographic returned to the site. They drilled a small hole in the limestone slab and inserted a camera. What they revealed left everyone perplexed. Behind the door, there was another slab, equally sealed, completely blocking the way. And to this day, this second barrier remains untouched. The constant refusal of authorities to allow new investigations raises inevitable questions. Is it just a legitimate concern for the preservation of archaeological treasures? Or are they hiding something they prefer to keep away from the public eye? The mystery deepened even further in 2017, when an international team of scientists applied an innovative technology, muon radiography, a method that uses cosmic particles to map the interior of the pyramid without damaging it. The result was surprising. They detected an enormous hidden void, located above the Grand Gallery, with dimensions comparable to the largest known chambers of the monument. The discovery of the enormous void inside the Great Pyramid, made in 2017, was hailed by scientists as one of the most important archaeological revelations in decades. However, once again, requests for a deeper investigation were blocked by Egyptian authorities, who justified the decision with vague explanations about security and preservation. This is not the only mystery that challenges the traditional version. Besides hidden chambers and sealed passages, there are also intriguing physical evidences that suggest something beyond what conventional archaeology admits. Researchers like engineer Christopher Dunn documented in detail marks on the granite of the king's chamber that indicate perfectly circular drillings and precision cuts, characteristics that resemble the use of advanced machines, completely out of the reach of simple copper tools. Granite, after all, is one of the hardest rocks that exist. With primitive chisels, the stone would break or the metal would wear out almost immediately. This raises a fundamental question. How did the ancient builders, supposedly thousands of years ago, achieve such precision? These indications, hidden chambers, mysterious doors, sophisticated cutting techniques, seem to point to a bold conclusion. Perhaps the builders had access to advanced technology, or who knows, to knowledge inherited from a much older civilization whose marks were almost erased by time. Even so, official archaeology continues to treat these hypotheses with caution, often defensively. Perhaps it is for fear that baseless speculations compromise the credibility of the discipline. But at the same time, this caution may be preventing us from revealing crucial truths, literally buried under our feet. And so the great questions remain. What exists behind the limestone doors still sealed? What was the function of the enormous hidden chamber discovered in 2017? And could investigating these spaces finally reveal who really built the pyramid and how they performed this extraordinary feat? Amidst all these uncertainties, there is a name that always appears: Dr. Zahi Hawass. For decades, he not only commanded excavations and announced discoveries, but also decided with almost absolute authority what could or could not be investigated and, principally, what the public would have access to. Charismatic, eloquent, and known for defending Egyptian heritage with fervor, Hawass occupied positions of enormous power, such as Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities and Minister of State for Antiquities. These positions gave him total control over excavation permits, official research, and the dissemination of finds. Behind his passion for Egyptian culture, however, many see something more rigid, a system that time after time blocked independent voices, stifled alternative theories, and kept untouched what the official narrative establishes. His defenders claim that Hawass only protects Egypt against irresponsible speculations and sensationalism. But critics raise another possibility, much more uncomfortable. Has his rigid regulation also served to hide discoveries that could rewrite history and shake academic reputations, established traditions, or even Egypt's national pride? By carefully choosing who can research and which results can go public, Hawass consolidated himself as the true guardian of Egyptian history. But this position also places him at the center of a delicate question. Is he protecting only the treasures of the past, or also the secrets that could transform everything we believe we know about the ancient world? Zahi Hawass's legacy thus remains controversial. At the same time that he projected Egypt onto the world stage and awakened global fascination with the pyramids and the Sphinx, he is also accused of having kept silent the most revolutionary discoveries that could change our understanding of antiquity forever. On one hand, Zahi Hawass was a passionate defender of Egyptian culture, projecting Egypt to the center of world attention and reinforcing its importance in the collective imagination. On the other hand, his rigid form of control may have had an invisible cost, restricting research, delaying critical explorations, and possibly keeping buried truths that could completely transform what we think we know about the past. This leads us to a delicate question. Was Hawass really protecting Egypt's heritage, or is he the guardian of secrets capable of rewriting history? As long as archaeology does not adopt a posture of total transparency, perhaps we will never know what really hides behind the sealed doors and blocked corridors of the Great Pyramid. With these questions still open, alternative theories arise that official Egyptology avoids discussing, but which gain increasing strength. Among them is the analysis of geologist Robert Bauval, who identified clear evidence of water erosion on the Sphinx, signs that point to an origin much older than the accepted chronology. This suggests that the monument may have been the work of a vanished civilization, long before dynastic Egypt. Along the same line, researcher Robert Bauval presented the famous Orion correlation theory. He noted that the three main pyramids of Giza not only align impressively with Orion's belt, but correspond exactly to the position of the stars as they appeared around 10,500 BC, thousands of years before the reign of Khufu. This astronomical coincidence would hardly be accidental. For the ancient Egyptians, Orion represented Osiris, the god of the afterlife and rebirth, which reinforces the idea that the pyramids could carry a deep cosmic meaning, revealing an astronomical knowledge much more sophisticated than traditional history attributes to them. Other researchers go even further, suggesting that these colossal monuments may be linked to a lost civilization endowed with technologies and skills that far exceed what we suppose about antiquity. Engineer Christopher Dunn, for example, analyzed in detail granite blocks of the Great Pyramid and found drill marks and cuts so precise that they simply could not have been made with rudimentary copper tools. Granite is one of the hardest known rocks, and even with modern equipment, the execution of such cuts would be extremely difficult. How then would it have been possible thousands of years ago? Another intriguing question involves the transport of the gigantic blocks used in the construction. Some weigh up to 80 tons and were extracted hundreds of kilometers from the Giza Plateau. To this day, there is no satisfactory explanation of how these colossal stones were moved, especially considering that the Egyptians of the time had neither wheels nor traction machines. Even with current technology, transporting and positioning rocks of this size requires heavy equipment, special vehicles, and high-level logistical planning. This impressive gap in the official narrative leaves an inevitable question. Did the ancient Egyptians really erect the Great Pyramid alone, with the resources attributed to them? Or did they count on help, whether from forgotten knowledge or from a much older civilization, whose legacy is only beginning to be unearthed? How would ancient peoples have managed to perform architectural feats that still today challenge modern engineers? Writer and researcher Graham Hancock expands this question with a bold hypothesis. In remote times, a global advanced civilization would have existed, now forgotten, which disappeared after a planetary catastrophe or a slow cultural collapse. Hancock points to sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a vast complex of temples about 12,000 years old, as evidence that peoples much older than the Egyptians already possessed sophisticated knowledge. According to him, this knowledge would not have been completely lost. Surviving fragments would have been transmitted and, later, influenced subsequent civilizations, among them ancient Egypt itself. This line of reasoning is supported by thinkers like John Anthony West and geologist Robert Bauval, who argue that the Egyptians did not suddenly develop out of nowhere their advanced architectural, astronomical, and mathematical skills. Instead, they suggest that these competencies were inherited from a much older culture, which would explain why the Egyptian civilization seems to have emerged already highly sophisticated, instead of evolving gradually over the centuries. Although traditional Egyptology discards these ideas as improbable or impossible, new evidence makes it increasingly difficult to ignore them. An example is the mysterious Temple of Osiris in Abydos, constructed with gigantic granite blocks, cut and fitted with precision similar to that observed in the Great Pyramid, something that exceeds by far the capabilities attributed to the Bronze Age Egyptians. Another impressive case is the enormous granite boxes of the Serapeum of Saqqara, which present such exactness in finishing that even modern machines would have difficulty reproducing them. These discoveries cast serious doubts on the official narrative, suggesting that there are hidden layers of history still waiting to be unveiled. Did conventional archaeology simply miss these clues, or is it consciously avoiding a debate that could shake the foundations of the accepted chronology? If a previous civilization really existed, who were its builders? And how did they possess techniques and knowledge so ahead of their time? Upon revisiting all the indications, the absence of inscriptions unequivocally linking the pharaoh Khufu to the Great Pyramid, the almost impossible perfection of the masonry, the sealed chambers that remain inaccessible, and signs of a possibly older origin, we are led to question what was always taught to us as truth. These elements suggest that the builders of the pyramids held a level of knowledge much more advanced than traditional history attributes to them. It may be that sophisticated techniques were simply forgotten over time, or perhaps the Egyptians themselves inherited this legacy from a much older people, adapting it and incorporating it into their culture. But if these ideas are so intriguing, why does official archaeology still resist accepting them? One of the reasons may lie in the monumental impact this would have. Admitting the existence of a previous and highly advanced civilization would force the rewriting of history books, the reformulation of museum exhibitions, and even more difficult, challenging academic traditions, and even the national pride of entire countries. After all, it is not just about history, but about cultural identity and intellectual prestige. For Egypt, admitting the possibility that the pyramids predate their own recorded civilization, or that perhaps they were not even built solely by the Egyptians, is touching on delicate questions of national pride and cultural identity. This is one of the reasons why official archaeology seems so resistant to bolder investigations. Exploring sealed chambers, Considering forgotten technologies or admitting alternative explanations could mean reopening entire chapters of history. But imagine if, under the sands of the desert, we found irrefutable proofs of an advanced and lost civilization. Such a revelation would not only change the way we view ancient Egypt, it would radically transform the entire narrative of human history, forcing us to reevaluate what our ancestors were capable of achieving and how much we still do not know of their legacy. Today, we face a dilemma. Will archaeologists ever have the courage to open the sealed doors of the Great Pyramid and investigate what hides there? Or will these secrets continue buried, awaiting future generations willing to challenge the established versions and seek the truth?